Welcome to The Unedited Woman, where you'll hear candid conversations to improve your everyday life. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Unedited Woman. My name is Ash Butterss, I am your host and I'm the makeover mentor, which means that I am here to help guide you through a physical, emotional, and spiritual transformation, however that needs to look for you. Basically, my mission when I started this podcast was to have authentic, real conversations that could help you transform your everyday life. And through the birthing of this podcast, I've been able to start having some really interesting conversations with some incredible people, as well as holding myself up to a level of accountability, showing up here and doing these solo episodes and checking in with you guys and really just being honest and vulnerable and open about what is happening in my life, so that hopefully you can find some identification to know that you're not alone and that we can journey this stuff together. That's really my hope and my dream. And I am so full of love right now and excitement and joy because earlier this morning I had the most incredible woman here in the studio and we recorded an episode for you guys which will be coming out in a few weeks' time. Her name is Morgan Willoughby. I absolutely adore Morgan. She is an energetic healer. She is an absolute soul sister, kindred spirit, and oh my goodness, it was like a really beautiful episode. There were tears, there were epiphanies, there was this holding of space for one another, which was so, so beautiful. And it just I can't describe it any other way than I felt lit up. And when I feel lit up, that's when I know that I'm on the right path, that I am living my life's purpose and that I'm seeing out my mission, what I'm here to do on this earth. And I absolutely had that feeling within every fiber of my being recording that episode with Morgan this morning, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. But I was so energetically alive and in such a flow state that I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get onto the podcast again and I'm going to record this solo episode for you guys, because I promised you in my last solo episode that I was going to record an episode on the Reclaim Her method, which, what on earth is that? It is the foundation the framework, I should say, to what I guide my clients through to help them achieve their transformations, whatever that needs to look like for them, because everybody's journey is different. Even if, for instance, two people are looking to remove alcohol from their lives, they may do that in very different ways. It's the same as if two people are looking at trying to identify their life's purpose, that's going to look completely differently. So it's really important to understand, as I guide you through this framework today, that even though it's an overarching framework that you can apply no matter who you are, it looks completely different for every single person. And I want to reiterate at the very start of this episode that this episode is not just for somebody who is struggling. Absolutely, if you're at a point in your life where you're seeking, you're searching, you're yearning for more, then please stick around and listen to this episode, because you'll find some really helpful tools to be able to apply into your life starting today that are really going to help to start to shift the needle and create your own transformation. But this may also be for those who are feeling a little bit stuck, maybe a little bit uninspired, or maybe things are actually going really well for you right now, but you're just somebody who is constantly wanting to learn, to self-educate, to evolve, to practice self-inquiry. Then this episode is also for you. So I'm so excited to share this wisdom with you. This has been birthed from a place of deep inner knowing. I continue to repeat this quote at the moment. Guys, forgive me, but I'm going to say it again. Ed Milet, you are most qualified to help the person that you used to be. So everything that I share with you throughout the Reclaim Her method has been born out of my own life experience. If you listened to my previous solo episode, you'll know that the person that you hear talking to you right now is a very different person from who I was just 5 years ago. And the fact that I've been able to transform all areas of my life, it's not even just been one area. It's not just been, say, a physical transformation. It's been literally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, professionally, every area of my life couldn't look any more different today. And that's been because I walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So know that this stuff works if you have the willingness to actually apply it and show up for yourself, because this stuff takes action. You know, as nice as it would be to just be able to sit at home and listen to podcasts and read books and not do anything, unfortunately, that will only get you so far. So I hope that after you listen to today's episode, you actually have some clarity around some of the things that you can start doing today to help you reclaim your life. And what do I mean by that? What is reclaiming even all about? When I talk about the idea of reclaim her, I'm talking about empowering you to reclaim yourself, to reclaim your identity, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's reclaiming your body, maybe it's reclaiming your voice, maybe it's reclaiming your desires. I think that there are so many of us that move through life merely existing. You know, that life is so complicated today. There are so many pressures put upon us, both externally and internally. I think some of the worst pressures we put on ourselves are the ones that we put on ourselves, right? But then there's also the external pressure, society's pressure, the pressure of a job, a family, whatever it may look like. You know, it can be so overwhelming that sometimes we almost just get into this state of busyness and we become unaware that we're in this, I guess, this like being existing, but not actually living. And so when I talk about reclaiming yourself, to reclaim her means to step back into your power, to get back into a flow state where you're in alignment with your values and you're living your life's purpose, whatever that means for you. Your purpose may be to be the most incredible mother to your children. Your purpose may be to write a book that changes the world. Your purpose may be, oh my goodness, I don't know, to live in an ashram and dedicate yourself to service. Whatever it is, when you live in alignment with that truth, then you start to live in a state of flow and life becomes easier. And I think that that's when you really start to tune into what we're actually here to do. And my experience has been that you don't have to necessarily quit your job and become a completely different person. Sometimes it's just making these small tweaks. I've got a client at the moment who, after applying this method to her life, we've been working together for almost a year now. She is a completely different person. And she came to me, she had gotten sober a few years ago, and she had this knowing, this yearning that she wanted more. But she didn't know, she was almost a little bit stuck, a little bit frozen. And it's been in applying this method into her life that she has just unlocked this incredible knowing within her. And now she's starting to follow a life's path and a life's journey that she didn't even know was possible just a year ago. You know, and she's still showing up for her life. She's still a mum. She's still got those responsibilities, but she's now following her dreams. And guess what? She then gets to show up in her life as the best version of herself because she's deeply fulfilled. So that's what I'm talking about when I say to reclaim her, to reclaim you. And that's what I'm going to share with you in today's episode. So buckle up, let's get going. So there's 5 steps to the reclaim her method. And step number 1, I call rescue the rescuer. Now, what this means is that, let's get it straight. And you've probably heard me say this before, so this is probably not new for many of you if you've been following me for a while. But let me say it again because I don't think you can hear it enough. In fact, I know that you can't hear it enough because I see this time and time again with my clients, with my friends. Self-care is not selfish. It is self-preservation. Let me repeat that. Self-care is not selfish, it's self-preservation. So what do I mean by this? For whatever reason, in our society, women have been told that they need to be everything to everyone. And as a result, so often women put themselves last. Now, over time, what tends to happen is that it will lead to burnout, it will lead to emotional fatigue, and eventually you start to lose your identity. You become the identity of who you are to everyone else in your life. So you become the wife, you become the mother, you become the insert job title, rather than the person you are. Remove all the labels. I want you to do this right now. Think about yourself for a moment. Remove all of the labels and ask yourself this question. Who am I? What comes up? Can you even ask that question? Or can you even get an answer to that question? Self-care is about putting yourself first and doing it without guilt. It's about having so much love for yourself that you value yourself enough to understand that you are worthy of nurturing and looking after yourself. You're busy rescuing everyone else, but who's rescuing you? That's why I call this first step Rescue the Rescuer. And I'm going to be really honest with you. This is probably the most important step, because if you don't get this right, then none of the other steps will actually happen. Because transformation and reclaiming your life requires a level of taking back your power, taking ownership, and giving yourself permission to do this work. The other interesting thing is about this, I find, is that a lot of the women that I work with, when we talk about this idea of putting yourself first, putting on your own oxygen mask first before attending to others, they tell you this in the safety demonstration, is that women feel guilty when they do this, and then they end up resenting the people that they love because they've been stuck in people pleaser mode, being everything to everyone else, and then they feel like they've got nothing left for themselves. Another analogy, or a really common saying, is that you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's true. If you think about your energy stores, like how much energy you have within your body, if you wake up in the morning and the first thing that you do is put your attention into other people, you're already starting to give from an empty well. Whereas if you can wake up in the morning just 15 minutes before the rest of the house and spend that time in just being with yourself. At this point, I'm not even going to tell you to meditate. I'm not even going to tell you to do anything. Just literally be with yourself. Maybe it's just having a cup of herbal tea and sitting for 15 minutes. You recharge your batteries so that when the rest of the house wakes up, you can start to give back without feeling like you're giving from an empty well, or that you're draining energy reserves that are already depleted. And when you come from a place of abundance and a place of energy, then you can actually give more. And people feel it. I often say, you might feel selfish taking that hour for yourself over the weekend. But trust me when I tell you that the version of you that then goes back into that home environment, or whatever environment it is, the version of you that re-enters is a much more happy, patient, loving, kind, tolerant version. And everybody benefits from that. But here's the thing. No one's going to give you permission to go and put yourself first. Except for maybe me. But you can't wait for your boyfriend or husband or wife to tell you to go and look after yourself. This is something that you actually need to demand. You need to put it in the calendar, commit to it with the same level of commitment that you show everyone else in your life. And in doing so, you start to send an unconscious message to yourself that you are worthy and that you are deserving. And when we start to shift the mindset of that, there becomes less resistance around these behaviors. And over time, you'll actually start to look forward to these opportunities for self-care. You won't feel guilty about prioritizing yourself anymore because you'll understand, because you'll be able to see firsthand the benefit of doing so. So step number 1 is to put yourself first. My mission on this earth is to empower you to choose self-care as a form of self-respect. Okay? That's what I'm here to do. And I will continue to remind you day in and day out that you are worthy and that putting yourself first is not selfish, it is self-preservation. Okay? Now, step number 2 in the Reclaim Her method is all about healing the core. What am I talking about when I say heal the core? I'm talking about core wounds, which can also often be described as negative core beliefs. So let me unpack this a little bit for you. If you haven't heard of the phrase core wound before, what I'm talking about here is a deep emotional belief that shapes how you see yourself in this world. It will influence the way you think, the way you feel, how you interact, and how you show up in relationships. Now, usually this comes from a past experience. It's often from childhood, and maybe it's an early memory from a time where you felt rejected or unworthy or unlovable. And what is generated from this is a core wound. And it might be like, okay, so say when you were young, your dad didn't come home at nighttime. You'd be sitting around the dinner table. This is actually my story, so let me just get honest here. I'm giving you an example of what happened for me. So we would sit around the dinner table waiting for dad to come home, and he just wouldn't come home. And I made up in that moment as a little girl that I wasn't enough, that I was unworthy, and that the reason he wasn't coming home was because I wasn't important enough. Like, you know, there must be other things that were more important, or other people that he wanted to spend time with over me. And so from a really young age, and that wasn't the only thing that triggered or created this core wound for me. There were many instances, but that's just one that comes to the top of my mind. And what ends up happening is I then identify with this core wound of not being worthy. And then it starts to play out and influence all of my behaviors and all of my choices in life from there on out. We have to be able to firstly identify the core wound, because without awareness, there is no change. You must be aware of something before you can change it. But we must be able to not only identify but heal the core wound if you ever want to be able to grow. If you want to reclaim your life, you have to be willing to heal your core wound. It is literally essential to transformation, because these are the things, the negative core beliefs that stop you from living fully and stop you from living authentically. Because when you believe those negative core beliefs about yourself, you don't let yourself be seen. And when this is left unaddressed, it can create these cyclical negative thought patterns that keep you playing small in life. You know, it might stop you from going for that job or making new friends. It creates almost like this self-sabotaging kind of behavior. And they can snowball. You know, one leads into the next. Because here's the other thing, the way the brain works is if you have a negative core belief, your brain will then search for evidence to confirm this core belief. And so it's almost like your brain creates a negative bias and it searches for any area of your life where you can validate that belief time and time and time again. And it just continues to grow and it becomes so toxic, and it's not even reality, right? It's come from an incident from childhood that probably had nothing to do with you in the first place. And when we heal the core wound, it starts to give us this foundation, almost like this ability to start to create a deep level of self-worth which then funnels into a sense of joy and purpose. Like, how could you possibly know what your purpose is in life if you think that you're unworthy? Right? So once you can identify the core wound and do some really powerful somatic healing and letting go and releasing the negative core beliefs and then actually reframing them into positive beliefs, like, you become unstoppable. But you have to be able to do this to even get the ball rolling. Now, step number 3, I call compassionate conversations, which is all about shifting your mindset. You know, I've learned that the way we talk to ourselves shapes so much of how we experience life. I'm sure I've shared this with you guys before, but we spend 25% of our daily life caught up in self-talk. So you can only imagine how influential our inner dialogue is in the way that we view ourselves. And I've seen firsthand how simple practices like gratitude and positive affirmations can actually change the way that you feel about yourself, which then impacts your life as a whole. Because like we just spoke about before, if you are thinking negatively about yourself and you're caught up in these negative core beliefs, then you're going to play small. But if you can totally shift that, reframe your mindset and actually start to talk to yourself in a compassionate, loving way, then you start to believe in yourself and you start to take more risks. Now that in the beginning might look really subtle. That might be just booking in to go to a yoga class if you've been nervous about trying something new. And that can grow into even bigger things. Like maybe one day, when you start to take these small steps, you start to build a little bit of confidence and you start to believe in yourself. And then maybe one day that leads into you quitting your job and actually following your dreams and creating a life doing, oh my goodness, God knows what, but your God-given purpose. That's what, right? But you don't just wake up one day doing that. You start to build these tiny little muscles of self-belief from these really small actions. And it starts with the way you talk to yourself. So let's for a moment just pause, and I want you to think about how we're just going to look at today. No matter what time you're listening to this podcast, whether it's first thing in the morning and you're out on a walk, good on you, or whether you're listening to this as you drive home from work, I hope you've had a great day. I want you to think about, just for a moment, how have you spoken to yourself since you woke up this morning? Has it been kind? Has it been compassionate? Has it been loving? Or have you been critical, judgmental, harsh? Have a think. Now, if it's been the latter, please know that you are not alone. Part of the reason I used to drink so much was because I had one of the loudest inner critics I think there possibly could have been. I called it the itty bitty shitty committee. And I was constantly telling myself that I wasn't enough, that I was unworthy. And it can still come up to this day. I don't think you ever fully heal from this stuff, but you can turn the volume down a lot. And then depending on how I'm going emotionally, spiritually, sometimes it'll dial up a little bit, but I have the tools now where I can dial it down again. So just becoming aware, first and foremost, of the way that you've been talking to yourself, and then making a commitment to change that, to improve, to just get 1% better each and every day, 1% kinder, 1% more compassionate. And what I often say to my clients is, I want you to talk to yourself the way you would talk to a best friend. Because guess what? If I spoke to my best friends the way that I would speak to myself back in the day, there's no way I would have had any friends. And yet we don't pull ourselves up when we do it to ourselves. So that's what we're going to start doing, okay? Every time you catch yourself being critical, being unkind, just stop. Stop and start again. And if you can, actually reframe whatever you were saying to yourself. Oh my God, you're so stupid. No. Maybe it's, hey, you're obviously struggling at the moment. I can see that. This is new, but stick with it. You'll get it. See how I didn't change that from you're stupid to you're smart? Like, it's not necessarily this unrealistic flip, because that may not feel real for you. That may not feel authentic. But it's just coming in with that layer of compassion, that layer of kindness. And over time, you'll notice that the way that you talk to yourself starts to improve, until hopefully one day you can actually have a really kind, loving, compassionate conversation with yourself. And that's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And so if this is something that you're wanting to get better at, if you can identify that this is an area that you need to work on, then I really want to encourage you to lean into a daily gratitude practice. If you can share this with a community, this is something that I get my clients to do in the Reclaim Her container. We actually share our gratitudes with each other every day, because it's one thing to write down what you're grateful for. That is really powerful in starting to rewire those neural pathways and create more positive frameworks. But when you share it with like-minded women, then you get to see what other people are grateful for as well. And that can be such a gift, because a lot of the times you can be doing a gratitude practice and it can either feel a little bit monotonous or almost a little bit like box ticking. But sharing it with other people, you actually get to see the things that maybe you weren't grateful for in your own life, like little blind spots, and you get to shine lights on those as well. So I think, and that's the power of healing and community, which I absolutely love, especially when women get together. So try and share it with some people, in your life. Maybe say to a couple of girlfriends, hey, do you want to create a WhatsApp chat or a Telegram group? And you can start sharing those messages with one another every day as well. It's really beautiful. Okay, step number 4 is all about embracing the feminine, which helps us to nurture our nervous systems. Now, I created a whole solo episode on this recently, so if you haven't listened to that one already, make sure you go back and have a listen. I think it was episode 7 where I spoke all about feminine embodiment, and I shared some awesome practical tools and tips that you can start to implement into your daily life. So go check that out if you've missed that one. But I feel like so many of us live in this constant state of go, go, go. I was talking about it at the top of the show, like this perpetual state of busyness. And I know for me, I wore busyness like a badge of honor. If somebody asked me, how am I? The first thing that would come out of my mouth was always, oh, I'm so busy. Because we live in a society that celebrates busyness. But how much is your busyness actually a coping mechanism to not look at your stuff? And this is how we can sometimes, we get caught up helping everyone around us, but we're not actually helping ourselves, because when we're focused outward, we don't have to look inward. We don't have to look at our stuff, which can sometimes be too painful. But I've realized as women that we must embrace our softness. We must embrace our feminine energy if we want to feel content, if we want to feel whole, if we want to feel complete. And to be able to tap into that femininity and that sacral energy allows you to then tap into your creativity. Again, especially if maybe you're at a point in your life where your kids are getting a little bit older, you've got a little bit more space to start looking at, well, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? For you to be able to really tune into that and tap into your creativity, you need to be spending time in your feminine energy. Now, that might look like a gentle yoga practice. It might look like incorporating some creative movement or some gentle breath work into your daily life. But just even having a simple awareness around your body and the manifestation of the physical and how that shows up, like just having the awareness is the first step. The more I spend in my feminine energy, the more grounded I am and the more connected I am to self. And I show up as the best version of myself when I have been able to tap into my feminine energy. Because I am the first to admit that I am in my masculine most of the time. I run my own business. I grew up in a hustle culture. I have always, sought external validation and the pat on the back, which I get from, doing all the things, achieving all the things. And yet that doing that and living only from that place has caused me to feel really disconnected and really empty a lot of the time. I'm not going to lie. And so it can feel really counterintuitive to slow down, to actually almost re-energize oneself. But that's been my experience. And I see it time and time again with my clients that when we really lean into this work together, and I get women to really connect to their bodies and learn how to regulate their nervous systems so that they can be fully present. Oh my goodness, it is so beautiful. Like, you know that saying where your focus goes, energy flows. You have the ability to be able to not only embody your feminine, but express your emotions and really give all parts of yourself. I think sometimes we just live in these channels, or we think that we can only be this kind of person or that kind of person. Like, you can be whoever you want to be. My head just went like, let your freak fly. I don't know where that came from, but that is really at its essence what I'm talking about here, is embracing all parts of you. And sometimes that might be that you just need to sit and journal and cry. And if that's what you're needing, then by all means do that. Maybe you need to go outside and dance in the rain. I don't know. Only you know. But guess what? The only way you can actually hear, like the body is so wise, okay? The body is constantly giving you feedback and communicating to you. But you have to slow down and get quiet enough to be able to hear it. Now, when you do all of that, many beautiful things start to happen. It's like coming home to yourself. You create this state of peace within yourself. And when you're living like that, guess what happens? You're no longer stressed. You're no longer anxious. All of these external stresses and things that we get caught up in our daily life, that all melts away when we embrace these feminine embodiment practices. That's why it's such an important foundation to this method. And the fifth and final step to the Reclaim Her method is all about living intuitively, which means following your inner wisdom. Now, for the longest time, I would make decisions based on what I thought I should do rather than what truly felt right for me. But once I started to learn this intuitive way of living, I started to trust my gut more. And I know I've shared this with you before, but let me repeat myself for a moment. I used to think that trusting your gut was just something people said. I thought it was a throwaway line. But now that I have this really strong connection to my intuition, I can't not listen to my gut. It is so, so strong. And that's because I have created that. I've cultivated that over time. And this is something that I can teach you how to do. But when you start to live intuitively, when you're trusting your gut and you're making decisions coming from the heart rather than the head, this is when you are completely in alignment with yourself and with your life and the world around you. And what happens is when you're living from this place of alignment, you start to trust yourself on a much deeper level. And you almost just move into like this flow state. Like things just seem to happen. Things become, I want to say, easy. That doesn't mean that life is always easy, but even when you're moving through things that are hard, it's a different layer of hard. It's a different experience of hard. Like I've had hard days in the past, and like compared to the hard days I have now, like they're incomparable. You know, back in the day, there was no hope. It was just so painful. It was so dark. Whereas when I'm going through periods now that are really challenging, there's still this like deep inner knowing that I'm going to be looked after, that I'm going to be okay, that I'm moving through something, that there's probably a lesson in it. And in knowing that, like, it just makes life so much easier. And one of the other really beautiful things that happens is you start to live more authentically, and you become less focused on what's happening out there. You know, I shared with you earlier that one of the big things that I would journey in the past was this idea of needing external validation, because I my core belief was that I was unworthy. And so the only way I could feel worthy was when people told me that I was good enough. And so I would seek out this external validation. Yet I don't need that today, because I have this deep sense of trust of myself, and I have a lot more respect and love for myself these days, which then allows me to trust my gut even more. And so whether it's through meditation or journaling or spending time in nature, whatever it is that works for you, I want to encourage you to lean into the practices that are going to deepen and strengthen your spiritual experience. Whether you believe in God, the universe, angels, maybe it's just energy, maybe it's frequency, whatever it is, I want you to lean into that more. There's no such thing as being good or bad at spirituality. I think all that it requires is a level of curiosity and a desire to want to continue to grow and learn and evolve. And what you'll start to find over time is that all areas of your life will start to change. You don't have to control these things anymore. Things will just start to happen. You'll be looked after. People who were in your life that aren't meant to be there anymore will just seemingly disappear. Not because you've cut off a friendship or, you don't have to get in your own way. It's actually the opposite. It's about getting out of your way and allowing the universe to guide you. And, leaning into this idea of relationships and whatnot even more is, I know now that rather than spending time with people, okay, let me explain it this way. In the past, somebody might reach out to me and, say, hey, do you want to grab lunch? And I would have had an inner dialogue. My gut would have communicated with me saying, oh, you don't really want to do that. But the people pleaser in me would have kicked in. I would have questioned my intuition. I would have quietened it down and actually told it to go away because I wanted that person to like me, or I thought it was the right thing to do. And so I would have gone to that lunch and spent an hour with that person, probably not feeling super safe anyway, not being able to share openly and vulnerably because I don't really trust that person. But I'm sitting there, going for the lunch anyway. And then I come home and I feel really depleted and I'm disappointed in myself because I've gone against what my gut knew, which was just to let that friendship fall away. I don't need to call that person up and say, I don't want to be your friend anymore, but I can just choose to prioritize other people. And in doing so, things just start to shift. That's a way of living intuitively. That's a way of making decisions based on that gut feeling. If something feels good, if something feels alive, if it lights you up, if it excites you, listen to it. If something makes you feel nervous in a not a good way, if anxious nervous, if you get a tightening of the tummy, nausea, then listen to that as well. That is your body communicating to you, saying that this is not right, this is unsafe, this is no good. It's so funny. I remember listening to Sabrina Zohar. She's an absolute legend. She's got her own podcast, The Sabrina Zohar Show. She's come on my old podcast before. In fact, I'm going to drop her episode as a rerun over Christmas because she's just amazing. And I remember we were talking about, the butterflies in the stomach and how often that can be misconstrued because so many of us have been taught as little girls, teenagers, that that's a sign that you like a boy. No, often it's a sign that your body is saying this person is not safe. Oh my God, literally it took me 3 decades to learn that lesson. I'm so glad I got it now. When you're in the right relationship, you actually feel really regulated and safe within your body. Who would have thought? Hey? Anyway, I've gone off track. living intuitively. It's about being able to trust your gut. It's knowing that you have a divine inner wisdom that is inside of you. And the more that you can get quiet and the more you can tune into self, the more that you can harness this. You have this superpower within you right now. So if you want to deepen your spiritual practices, some things that you can do, of course, meditation is amazing because it creates that stillness of the mind, which allows your guides to drop in and communicate with you. Journaling can be really beautiful as well. I am a huge fan of a prayer practice. I know I've spoken to you guys about prayer a lot before, and I will continue to advocate for that. Even if you don't know who you're praying to or what you're meant to be saying, just try it. You cannot get it wrong. Whatever needs to flow from you, let it flow. And then after you've done those practices, get still and just listen in for an answer. You know, if I'm praying to God, I take a moment after and I pause and I listen to see if anything drops in. And sometimes I'll be stuck on something. You know, I'll be looking for an answer on something, like whether it's to do this or this. And I'll pray. And it may, you know, sometimes days may go by and then all of a sudden the answer drops in. That's your inner wisdom. That, to me, is God. And you can call it whatever you want. But when we open up to spirit, guides, universe, and we live in alignment with our truest self, that is when you get to reclaim your life. That is when you get to become the most authentic version of you, the most deeply fulfilled version of you. And that can look like whatever it needs to look like in any given moment in your life. One thing I know for sure is that I want to continue growing and evolving until the day that I am no longer here. And I hope that for you too, because if we're not growing, we're dying. So that's the method, ladies and gentlemen. If there's any men listening today, probably not. Ladies, that is the method. 5 simple steps that are so powerful to support you to reclaim your life, to reclaim her, to reclaim you. Step number 1, rescue the rescuer. Step number 2, heal the core. Step number 3, compassionate conversations. Step number 4, feminine embodiment, regulating your nervous system. And the 5th and final step, living intuitively. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the episode today. Please go ahead and try implementing some of these tools. You can take these away and start today. Let me know how you go. If you want to know how I can support you in implementing these tools, then please feel free to reach out on Instagram. You can hit me up in the DMs, or there's a section on the website where you can reach out there. I'd love to be able to offer some further guidance if that feels right for you. If you want to support the show, you can do so by heading over and giving us a follow and leaving a 5-star review. I am going to be back here next week with another epic interview episode. So I will see you guys then. I hope you have a beautiful week. Mwah! Take care.